Good evening, it's 6:30 p.m. this Monday evening and time to know all that happened in South India with me, T.S. Sudhir on Up South. Our top story today is on the web of terror that has its roots in coastal Karnataka. In fact, even as the Karnataka police pats itself on the back for a good job done with the arrest of 4 suspected members of the Indian Mujahideen, the fact that the port town of Bhatkal in coastal Karnataka has emerged as a fountainhead of terror has sent a shiver down the khaki spine. The police claims that this module was responsible for every single blast in India since 2010.
The men who the Bengaluru police claims were responsible for supplying explosives for every blast in India since 2010, all of them significantly with the Bhatkal connection, a trading town in coastal Karnataka. Thanks to the notoriety of Riaz and Yasin Bhatkal, has become the synonym for terror in the country.
The kingpin of this module is 34-year-old Dr. Syed Ismail Afaq, a homeopathic doctor practicing in both Bhatkal and in Bengaluru. Ideologically part of the Indian Mujahideen since 2004, he received training in assembling a bomb in 2011 in Pakistan. Police sources claim that he used the cover of visiting his relatives in Karachi to meet his handlers across the line of control.
Riaz Saidi has been arrested and brought to Bangalore from the Bajpayee airport in Mangalore. His arrest has been done based on information that we have collected from the accused whom we have already arrested.
The arrest of the 4th member, Riaz, at the Mangaluru airport on Saturday night, just as he was about to board the flight to Dubai, was cooperative during the interrogation.
कितने साल से दुबई में रहता है?
10 साल से दुबई में रह रहा है। 2 साल में एक बार, 1 साल में एक बार आता है। अभी जाने वाला था, पहले ये टिकट बहुत महंगी थी, इसलिए नहीं जा सका। हम बहुत गरीब हैं, बहुत महंगी की वजह से हम दुबई थोड़ा पीछे डाल दिए।
The police say Dr. Afaq was indoctrinated by making him surf jihadi websites, a claim his family disputes.
कमिश्नर से खबर आई कि आफाक को अरेस्ट किया गया है। बेकसूर, बिल्कुल बेकसूर, कोई यकीन ही नहीं करेंगे। उसका ऐसा सोच भी नहीं सकते हैं कोई। उसका ये दोनों बच्चे बहुत मासूम, पूरे भटकल वाले वाकिफ है। यहाँ के भी उसके जो है पेशेंट्स है, हिंदू पेशेंट्स है, मुस्लिम पेशेंट है, सबको मालूम है वो कैसा बच्चा है। वो अपनी बीवी के सास से, ससुर से, देवर से, जेठ से सबसे बातें करता था, बस यही है। उतना ही कसूर है। वो पाकिस्तान से टच में था।
The investigation into various terror cases had gone cold, with the police unable to establish how the explosives were sourced. Now with Afaq's arrest, the police believes that they will be able to connect the dots and unearth more sleeper cells. With T.S. Sudhir in Hyderabad, Pratibha Raman, Bangalore. Headlines today.
Joining me now from Bengaluru for a perspective is Hormiz Tarakan, an authority on internal security. Also my colleague Pratibha Raman, who has been reporting on this story. Hormiz Tarakan, in many senses, these errors, if one is to go by the claims made by Bengaluru police, have blown the lid of the terror network, especially operating in Karnataka. Do you also see it the same way?
Well, the Bangalore police who are carrying out this investigation would be in a better position to answer that question. But I would emphasize the need for not taking an alarmist view of what has been revealed in recent investigations. The police in Bangalore and Karnataka have been aware for quite some time that there has been terrorist linkages developing among the youth in Karnataka, and this was dramatically exposed when Riazuddin Nasser was arrested in early 2008 and was questioned, and he revealed the beginnings of what was yet to be known as Indian Mujahideen, and which later in the year 2008, after 26/11 and a series of blasts, across the country, came to be identified as the homegrown variety of terrorism, which we'd always been worried about. Yes, those leakages remain and need to be investigated, and the people concerned need to be tracked. And I think our police and our intelligence services are doing a good job of investigating and unraveling these connections.
Right. Pratibha, though there is a sense of relief that these 4 men have been arrested, a module of the Indian Mujahideen has been neutralized, but is there also a sense that the module's activity is generally not known to the activities of other modules of the Indian Mujahideen or SIMI? So in this particular case, it may be a case of only one module, and the police may not have really come to know about the activities of various other sleeper cells which the Indian Mujahideen would have set up.
Well, Sudhir, in a way, yes, it could be just one module that's busted, but then there is hope that these 4 men would actually break the backbone of terror, because number one, the investigation is back, the heat is back on the investigation with regards to the various blasts that took place in the nation in the last few years. And number two, the key kingpin here, who seems to be Dr. Afaq, but then fresh leads suggest that there's also the 4th accused who seems to be senior, but whether in terms of experience or actions is yet to be ascertained. And number 3 would be the fact that there is a handler abroad upon whose instructions these people have been operating, and perhaps the police is working on putting the missing pieces together, and that could perhaps lead them to go in for a big kill. Sudhir.
Right. Mr. Tarakan, the fact that these men arranged for explosives and they were perhaps used in the blast which took place in Hyderabad, in Pune, in Bengaluru, isn't it a little bit of a surprise that actually these explosives could be carried from the coast of Karnataka to the mainland with any of the checks which are put in place at different entry and exit points actually noticing it?
Well, the finer points would be known only to people who are actually there and investigating the case. But my feeling is that when a huge quantity of explosives has been detected 1 or 2 days after a major blast like the Church Street explosion, what it would indicate is that the intelligence agencies had been keeping track of, and there's actually a developing story which they had not acted on yet. I was looking for an appropriate time to pounce on, and it doesn't necessarily mean that there was a security lapse.
Right. Hormiz Tarakan and Pratibha Raman, thanks a lot for joining us there from Bengaluru on this very important story coming from coastal Karnataka. News now from Sri Lanka. Did former Sri Lankan President Mahinda Rajapaksa plot a coup on the afternoon of the 9th of January when the results of the presidential election were out? In fact, Sri Lanka's new government has accused Mahinda Rajapaksa of having tried to stage a military coup to stay in power despite losing the election to Maithripala Sirisena. Mangala Samaravira, a senior aide of President Sirisena, has said that the coup was averted only because of the army chief's decision not to do anything which would be seen as anti-democracy. The new government, according to Samaravira, will initiate an investigation into the conspiracy. Joining me now from Chennai is my colleague Shisha Reddy. Shisha, this has been doing the rounds since the afternoon of the 9th of January that perhaps the former President Mahinda Rajapaksa did plot some kind of a military coup to stay in power, not to hand over power to Maithripala Sirisena. Does one infer that perhaps this is also a way of the Sirisena camp trying to get back at Mahinda Rajapaksa, some kind of a political witch hunt, which perhaps would be in the offing?
Well, exactly, Sudhir, because it has been doing rounds, as you said, from the day of counting. In fact, because what is also coming out is that whether it's a serious threat to Rajapaksa or, whether they are going to get to the credentials of what the army chief and the police had said. So these things have to be, conveyed. But on the other hand, Maithripala Sirisena's official spokesperson has come out openly and said this. But, again, there was also huge pressure on Rajapaksa to leave, to have a smooth transition again because of the international pressure. In fact, So, once the investigation probe is on, then perhaps, some sort of credential information would come out. But again, one wouldn't be able to really confirm because the senior political analysts there out say that this might be some sort of witch hunt, in fact, that what the Sirisena, the new government, has taken over.
Right. Shisha, stay on with us because there's also some interesting, important news coming from Tamil Nadu. Srirangam, the constituency that was represented by former Tamil Nadu Chief Minister Jayalalitha, will go to polls on the 13th of February. Remember, this was the seat from where she was disqualified after she was convicted by a court in Bengaluru on the 27th of September. Shisha, this is one election the AIDMK will be expected to pull out all stops. Isn't that the way it is being seen there in Chennai?
Well, Sudhir, the history is repeating itself as far as, Srirangam and Jayalalitha is concerned, because the same thing happened in 2001, but Jayalalitha was able to bounce back to power in a matter of 5 months after she was disqualified by the Supreme Court. But this time the case is a little different. But yes, she will not be able to contest. She will have to handpick somebody. But again, the mood in Srirangam constituency is so different that it's not as it was last time, because after, two times a victory for the AIDMK in the Lok Sabha elections and before the assembly elections, where Jayalalitha had won in the Lok Sabha in the assembly elections, remember, there was a difference of at least 40,000 votes, and this time as well the mood is as jubilant as it was, though it has not taken any beating on Jayalalitha's recent conviction. Yes, people are because she has done a lot of things to people in her constituency, so that is one thing, the majority factor that people are looking at. So Jayalalitha, if she's going to handpick somebody, that person will have a majority, in these elections.
Right.
Sudhir.
Absolutely, Shisha Reddy. We will be looking very closely at the Srirangam by-election that will take place in a month from now. Now, with Pongal festival just round the corner, protests against the ban on the popular bull festival of Jallikattu have intensified across southern Tamil Nadu. While Animal Welfare Board stands by the Supreme Court order, political parties in Tamil Nadu have urged the central government to appeal against the apex court's ban on the traditional sport. Joining me now from Chennai is Radharajan, animal rights activist, also TKS Elangovan of the DMK. Mr. Elangovan, the DMK has supported the Jallikattu. How can the DMK, which I guess is a party that does not support cruelty to animals, support a sport that clearly harms the bulls?
No, it is not. It is just a game. You see, Jallikattu is a game. Maybe it was cruel in the earlier years, but nowadays there is no danger to the bulls which are in the game. And well, even last year and the year before, we had gone to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court had ordered for Jallikattu after ensuring that there is no danger to the bulls. So it is a game, more or less a game. There is no danger to the bulls.
Radharajan, you heard Mr. Elangovan say that it is a game. In fact, he continues to repeat it. The cruelty to the bulls is certainly not an issue that seems to affect the political class there in Tamil Nadu. You think there isn't sufficient political backing for your concerns?
There is absolutely no political backing for our concerns about cruelty meted to the bulls during Jallikattu, Rekla and the other sport. If we had had even a modicum of political support, we wouldn't be fighting a lonely battle. But even without political backing, I still think we managed to do what we did. And we got a wonderful order from the Supreme Court banning Jallikattu.
Gopala Gopala, the Telugu remake of Oh My God, released on Saturday. The film stars Venkatesh, Pawan Kalyan and Shreya Saran. But Gopala Gopala has faced the ire of right-wing groups who objected to the depiction of Hindu gods in the Telugu movie. Joining me now from Hyderabad's Ramanadu studios is Telugu superstar Venkatesh. Venkatesh, thanks a lot for joining us on Up South. Your home banner has produced this film. Do you think you have crossed the line in any way?
No. I'm not here. Basically, we've not done anything like that. They're not going to cross any line. In fact, we portrayed them very well, and it's basically a story of a person who is a non-believer, an atheist, who is going through a problem, and the crisis makes him realize that there's something more to it, and then he needs some knowledge, and the knowledge comes from God, and God shares His wisdom, like I said earlier, with the scriptures, and then how He transforms and how He puts it across to the people.
Venkatesh, in December we saw Aamir Khan's PK also becoming the target of similar protests. Now, as someone who has spent close to 3 decades in the film industry, what's your take on such protests?
No, like I said earlier, I mean, it's natural, and everybody has a right to protest. But once they see the film and you convince them, and it should be smooth. So everything should go on smoothly. And you should be careful not to cross the line, because everybody is sensitive. We have to respect each one's feelings and their sentiments. So I think it's how you go the midway, follow the middle path, and not to do any extreme thing.
Venkatesh, thanks a lot for joining us there from Hyderabad. That's it then on Up South. This Monday evening news and updates will continue on Headlines Today.